All right, here we go. So today we're going to talk about color and its meaning. And so I want to kind of take a look. We're going to go back to this slide that just sort of disappeared. So see how the names, I mean, everyone knows what this is. It's like eyeshadow, right? But look at some of these names that they gave the colors. I think it's so interesting. And have you ever thought about why colors get the names that they are? I mean, this is hilarious. Like we've got Cosmic Girl, and we've got Night Flight, and Night Fairy, and Bombshell down in the corner. I mean, oh my gosh, what is that all about? So when we think about color, we think about associations. And I guess that's the real key here. And what are those associations, right? And I think they change culturally as we go, as we change as well. So as the culture changes, the people in it change, and their associations and what they think is important change, and their psychology in terms of the way they think about things, all of those things change. So, but one thing that doesn't change is that we love color. We absolutely love color down to the, like basically in our soul. And when we look at bright colors like this, they excite us. They give us a feeling of abundance and a kind of a feeling of like security and that the world is a wonderful place, right? Because look at all of that. It's just amazing. So those are all pigments. So, when we talk about color, we talk about the psychology of color. And in different cultures, there were different associations. So like in ancient Egypt, red was the color of life and victory. During celebrations, Egyptians would paint their bodies with red ochre. And the normal skin tone of Egyptian men, when it was depicted on pyramids and other places, was almost always depicted as red. And that was not a negative connotation. Red also was the color of fire and blood. In the Hebrew, words for blood and red have the same origin, DM, which means red, and DOM, which means blood. Blood and fire have both positive and negative connotations. Bloodshed, aggression, war, hate are all one side, and love and warmth and compassion are on the other. And there we see a sacrificial lamb. The ancient Greeks associated the bright, luminous color of red with the male principle. Red was also the color the Greek gods of war had, Phoebus and Ares. In prehistoric cultures, however, red was always associated with the female principle. Mother Earth provided the Neolithic people with the red color ochre, which was credited with life-giving powers. The association of the red color with female principle in Japan also survives to this day. So red is very common for wedding dresses, for example. Orange is another one. And again, kind of going back to that idea of where do these names come from. So these are all sort of shades of orange, but look at the variety. It's incredible. We know that orange actually comes from the Old English word giolured, which meant literally yellow and red together. The word orange was adopted after the fruit was introduced in English via the Spanish word naranja, which comes all the way down from Sanskrit, naranj. And then eventually, it moved and changed to what we know today as orange. Right, so we kind of drop the N. And orange is a great color. There's so many associations when it comes to orange. So it's enthusiasm and energy and balance. It has less intensity and violence than the color red, and it's calmed by the happiness of yellow. The color orange often relates to autumn when the leaves turn shades of orange and brown. Orange also is very important to Hinduism and Buddhism. In Hinduism, the color orange represents fire, a metaphor for the inner transformation that is experienced by swamis during their when they don their orange robes. Orange is also used for other things like the safety purpose as a warning color. Orange can be found on dangerous machinery, high visibility clothing, traffic cones. In Wisconsin, when we go deer hunting, we wear orange. Yellow. So yellow, the word also comes from the Old English. We just said it a minute ago, and that's gilo. Yellow is associated with sunshine, knowledge, and the flourishing of living creatures, but also with autumn and maturity. The yellow sun was one of humanity's most important symbols and was worshipped as god in many cultures. According to Greek mythology, the sun god Helios wore a yellow robe and rode in a golden chariot that was drawn by 4 fiery yellow horses across the heavenly firmament. The radiant yellow light of the sun personified divine wisdom. And here we see a painting by Paul Gauguin with a lot of yellow. In China, yellow is assigned to the active and creative male yang principle. With ancient Egyptian ascribed, they often ascribed yellow to the female principle. And I am not going to be able to let him in. In the English language, yellow has traditionally been associated with jaundice and cowardice in Italy. Yellow is giallo, refers to crime stories, both fictional and real. The association began around the 1930s, and when the first published series of crime novels had yellow covers. Yellow is also associated with caution, and yellow lights tell drivers to slow down because the red light is coming. We also see construction scenes and other dangerous areas and are often enclosed by a bright yellow barricade, tape repeating the word caution over and over and over again. The yellow sun was one of humanity's most important symbols and was worshipped as god in many cultures. According to Greek mythology, the sun god Helios wore a yellow robe and rode English word for growing or growen, to grow. So green and grow kind of come from the same word. I think the study of language when it comes to colors, and really a lot of things, is extremely interesting, especially to see how language changes over time. And here again, we can see many, many different shades of green. Green is the color of life. It is the color of seasonal renewal. In the springtime, the green triumphs over the barren winter, and green symbolizes hope and sometimes even immortality. So when we think of green, we think of new growth and all of that. The Chinese associate green and black with the female yin, passive and receiving principle. And here, I think, this is a river, and this is so overgrown with algae that here's these kids just trying to swim in it. But again, with climate change and all the things that are happening with pollution, we can see green being not so great. In Islam, they venerate the color green, expecting paradise to be a full, lush green vegetation. Green is also associated with regeneration and fertility and rebirth due to the connection with nature. There we see a beautiful Islamic garden. In alchemy, solvents for gold were named the green lion or green dragon by the alchemists. Such liquids were instrumental in the beginning of the alchemy book called the Opus Magnum. Transparent green crystal symbolizes the secret fire, which represent the living spirit of all the substances, and they thought that they could turn these substances into gold, which of course they never did. Green also is, while it's associated with growth, is also associated with death and with jealousy and sickness. Sometimes you'll hear like someone's really green and they're really sick, or someone's green with envy, and there's that idea of jealousy. So green has a lot of interesting components to it, and I didn't even really touch on all of them for sure. Blue is the color of the sky and water. From the time of ancient Egyptians, the blue depths of water personified the female principle, while blue was associated with the male principle. the blue is the color of heavenly gods and stands for the distance, for the divine, and for the spiritual. Blue is also the symbol of fidelity. Blue flowers, such as forget-me-nots, are part of, like many times in wedding ceremonies. And here we can see the royal couple, and she's got her blue sapphire diamond on. So forget-me-nots and violets symbolize faithfulness. According to an Old English custom, a bride would wear a blue ribbon on her wedding gown or a blue sapphire in her wedding ring, and tiny flowers of blue are in part of the wedding bouquet. So it's all about faithfulness and fidelity. In the English language, blue often also refers to something else. It refers to sadness or feeling blue. And it's kind of hard to find out where that came from, and I may have talked about it before, but old sailors, there was a custom that if you lost your captain, that you would fly a blue flag. And I searched everywhere to try and find an image of a boat with a blue flag. It was impossible. But they would fly a blue flag when they returned into port, and people would know that they had lost their way, their captain. In German, blue had a weird symbolism. It kind of meant to be drunk, to drink too much alcohol, and you were blue. They derived this from, sort of an ancient language. They also, blue, there's, different periods of art. So like there were the Blau Riders or Blue Riders. In modernism, there was also Picasso, and this is from his blue period. Purple. And so here we have a lot of different shades of purple. So the Old English purple, P-U-R-P-U-L, is where the word comes from. And also purpura or porphyra, which was the Greek word for purple. So the name of the Tyrian purple dye manufactured in classical antiquity, Tyrian purple, the purple dye of the ancients mentioned in many texts dating back to 1600 before Christ, was produced from the mucus of a hypobranchial gland of a various species of marine mollusks, actually called the murex, M-U-R-E-X. And it took something like I said earlier to you, something like 12,000 shellfish to extract 1.5 grams of the pure dye. Legends credit its discovery to Hercules, or rather to his dog, whose mouth was stained purple after he went and ate some of the fish on the Levantine shore. King Phoenix received a purple-dyed robe from Hercules and decreed that all rulers from then on should wear purple as a royal symbol. And so it comes from Greek mythology. In human color psychology, purple is often associated with royalty and nobility because of the Tyrian purple and because it was only affordable to the most wealthy. Byzantine images of Christ often express him in a purple robe. Also, Byzantine empresses gave birth to their children in an entirely purple chamber, wearing purple clothes and so on. Purple has many different shades, and often it's usually something between red and blue. But on a chromatic diagram, the line connecting the extreme spectral colors of red and violet is also known as the line of purples. Some confusion exists between the names, so sometimes you'll hear purple and sometimes you'll hear violet. Purple is typically defined as a mixture of red and blue light, whereas violet is a spectral color, specifically 380 to 420 millimeters on the spectrum, on the light spectrum. So it's still purple, but yeah, there's a small section of it that's considered violet. The color black represents opposing ideas, authority and humility, rebellion and conformity, and wealth and poverty. Black also signifies absence, modernity, power, elegance, professionalism, mystery, evil, traditionalism, and sorrow. many times we see the color black, used as in images to sort of show contrast. We also see it in spiritual, ideas of submission. And then black also implies that the priests who wear black signify their submission to God. In Western countries, black is the color of mourning, while in many African countries, white is often the color of mourning or worn during funerals. In Japanese culture, black means experience as opposed to white, which means to be naive or to be new. Thus, the black belt is considered the highest achievement and seniority in the martial arts, whereas the white belt is always worn by beginners. In Western countries, as we said, we see the black as mourning. So, and last, we're going to look at white. So white represents sometimes purity or innocence. Some of the positive meanings of white can convey cleanliness, freshness, simplicity. The color or the lack of color, white, or the combination of color and light, often means a blank slate, symbolizing a fresh start. On the negative side, it can also be seen as stark and cold and isolated. So we're going to look at a series of pictures now, and I am not going to talk. And I just want you to look at these pictures, and I want you to think about what they represent to you. Like, how do you feel when you see them? So we're not going to go into detail talking about them. I'm just going to put them up, and then I want you to kind of feel like, what does the color feel like? So I'll start off with this one, which is a castle that they used to make pattern Disneyland after. And you'll notice that the natural picture of it is all in blue. So what I do is I went in Photoshop and I changed it all. And now it's the same exact picture, except I changed the coloration of it to be gold. And now it feels a little bit different. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, I'm going to stop here for a second now, and I just want you to take a look at all of these symbols, and I want you to tell me which ones you recognize, not now, but at the end of class. So I want you to count how many of these you actually recognize. So go through and take a look at them and see what corporate symbols you found. And these are all just by color and position. Okay, here's a corporate identity via color space. Right now we're going to go back to just looking at colors and thinking if they're appropriate for what we're looking at, or if they're shocking, or what do you think? And that's the man who built that. That's Leonard Knight. And he died in about 10 years ago in February, but he built that whole mountain. It's like 50 feet tall, and I don't even know how wide it is, and did all the color and everything else. And he called it Salvation Mountain. He created a nonprofit group. And he was their caretaker. And I think they've hired a caretaker now. But the desert's natural rain, wind, and heat have created a need for sort of constant maintenance. All right, and so last but not least, color matters.